Hey, before I start this tutorial, just a little note. Whilst I was recording, I eventually started having problems with my voice, so sorry about that. It may be a bit more raspy than usual. Let's get into the tutorial. Hey there, I'm Pascal and welcome to another home automator tips and tricks tutorial. Today it is a focus tutorial on the internal web server to ESPHome. And I want to have a quick chat about it because it has changed in 2024.10 and it broke a few of my projects. I thought it was a good idea to show you all about the web server and what it can do. The card for the coding practices, tips and tricks series is above here, and this will be part of that series, although not a tutorial targeted onto the modular system. Please note that there will be no GitHub repository for this tutorial. I will incorporate these changes in my next tutorial in the series coming out soon. If you have seen any of my previous tutorials, welcome back. If you are new, welcome and enjoy. I know that your time is valuable, so the tutorial has chapters which you can access in the video timeline or in the description. Before we start, I'd like to remind you that you can ask questions in the description below or join our Discord server where either myself or somebody else might have a solution to your problem. If you like this tutorial, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell and share. This will enable the YouTube algorithm to present this tutorial to more people. I also opened the YouTube membership and super thanks. If you're inclined to help the channel, this is a good way to do it. It will allow me to buy more sensors and more MCUs and more equipment and tools to carry on with this channel. The current membership is under $1 or euro at the date of recording. I will work on adding new ones with better perks in the future. But let's get into it. If you've watched any of my ESPHome tutorials, you'll know that I'm a staunch supporter of the ESPHome web server. I rely on it heavily for my device development. Remember that this is the web server that runs on device. This has got nothing to do with the dashboard. By utilizing the web server, I can bypass the hassle of integrating the device into homeassistant, which often results in orphan properties, which requires the device to be removed and then re-added to keep a clean setup. Additionally, the web server has the added benefit of displaying internal properties. These are properties that are not exposed to homeassistant, and it makes it an essential tool for debugging and troubleshooting. However, it is important to consider the potential drawbacks of using the web server. For certain MCUs, I would advise against its use due to its high memory usage, which can lead to the device getting stuck into a reboot cycle. Some MCU also have limited flash memory, making it unsuitable for use with the web server. Furthermore, each additional component added to the MCU takes away processing power from other tasks, potentially slowing down the device as a whole. It is essential to weigh these factors when deciding whether to utilize the ESPHome web server for your project. There are cases where I would not use the web server, and I thought I'd give you a few. When the Bluetooth component is used, as it is very memory intensive and very memory hungry, it does not play well with other components that require memory, the web server being one of them. I've had many instances where a reboot loop happens because of this. When the voice assistant is used, it is also memory hungry. And because it is memory hungry, I would really avoid using it with web server or with Bluetooth for that matter. There is another case where maybe we don't think of it quite often, and that is the flash size of our MCUs. Though in most cases, when we've got a flash size problem, it will be caught by the compiler. It's just plain better to avoid it. Lastly, MCUs with lower power, such as the ESP8266, it may work, But remember, it is stealing processing time. There might be questions that you may be asking. The first one, have I gotten any ESP to be stables with BLE and the web server? The answer is yes. The ESP32S3N16R8, and what a mouthful, will be perfectly content running both. But it has the latest Extensa dual-core 32-bit processor paired with 512 kilobits of SRAM, a massive 8 megabytes of PSRAM, and 16 megabyte flash. So to give you an idea of what this is like to work with, the closest thing in the computer world that we would come to is running an Intel 14th Gen i9 processor with 64 gigabytes of RAM, a 2 terabyte SSD, not to mention an NVIDIA RTX 4090. What wouldn't run on that? And how many of us would love to have a machine like that? Another question you may be asking is, if I tried to run Voice Assistant, though it is on my list of things to try, I have not gotten there yet. Is the web server and everything you are about to discuss today essential to ESPHome? My straight answer would be no. I have not found that the web server is essential or critical to any use case except one: troubleshooting. And with that, development convenience. But this may change. It may be more useful in the future. But let's move on to some code. Let's set up a web server on ESPHome. We will be using version 3, and I will show you some of the reasons why. We'll also be using our trusty ESP32C3 for this demonstration. I'm going to walk through everything with you, starting with what I believe is the most basic configuration I would use, which I've already pasted into VS Code. So let's start. The first one is the declaration of the web server component. Now you will notice that it is inside of a file called web server. And just to show you where it is located in the common network web server, which you should already have because I've already discussed this in various tutorials. Next, we are going to start with the port. I use 80, which is the standard port for HTTP or web server. Now, you could use any other port if you want additional security. However, if you are like me and your device cannot talk to the internet and the internet cannot talk to your device, I don't see the value of doing that. It's an added complication that we do not need. Second is the version, and the version is version 3. Now, why is that? I will show you that in a second. The next one is local. Local forces the files, such as the cascading style sheets and JavaScript files, to be built as part of the bin file that will be deployed to the device. The next one is include internal. Now, I've already touched on this, but internal properties are properties that are never exposed to Home Assistant. How is this useful? Well, they are properties you do not want to expose to Home Assistant, simply because they are temporary properties or they are used for calculations and things like that. In my case, I go one step further sometimes, where I don't include them because I've got an equivalent a little later that will be far cleaner and far more concise than what ESPHome returns to me. So include internal basically forces these properties to be shown onto the web server, or onto the web page, I should say. Both. It is authentication, and as we know, authentication requires two things: at the minimum, a username and password, or alternatively an API. This is the way that Home Assistant and ESPHome talk, is through an API, which is technically a web server. However, this web server outputs HTML, whereas the API outputs JSON, as far as I know. Now, I'm not going to go into the technicalities of those two types of web servers, but just understand one is for the API and is not really human readable, whereas the other one this one, in fact, is human readable for us. So the last thing I'd like to just mention, and it's mentioned in passing, there is something called Enable Private Network Access. Now, the best way to understand that is to go and read the ESPHome documentation, and I will leave a link to that specific property inside of the description for this video. Okay, I think we've covered everything that we need to cover, and we're going to move on to things that are a bit more exciting. Before I carry on, let me just say it. ESPHome 2024.10 broke my code. The changes are minor and mostly affect the web server sorting weight property and introduces a new concept called groups. Before I go and show you code, let me explain why I use sorting weight. There are many cases where I want to see specific components at the top of the web server list or web page list. For example, those that are most useful. In the room sensor device, temperature, humidity, presence, ECO2 could be considered important, whereas Wi-Fi strength, device temperature, and device uptime are good for troubleshooting, but not necessarily useful every day. So this is where web server sorting weight was very useful, but it's changed. In the previous version, web server's sorting weight would look like this. However, if I try to build the file right now, this is the error that I get. Web server sorting weight is an invalid option for IP address. The web server sorting weight has been available for a while, since version 3. Everything that I'm going to show you from here off is only available in version 3. Web server sorting weight has changed from this format that you can see right now to this format. It's not a big change, but I think that the ESPHome team is working towards something. I don't have any insider information, but if I was to guess, with everything that I'm about to show you, it's going to impact Home Assistant in a positive way. So I am going to close this. I'm going to show you what the device looks like right now. And I think there is a bit of a little bug. We'll see that later. It was working perfectly well in 2024.10. I've now got 2024.10.1, and it doesn't react the way that I expect. I'm assuming that will be fixed shortly. So we'll keep the diagnostics section visible, and we are going to do this change and compile it, which is basically IP address sorting weight 1. We are going to copy this across a few others. We're going to make this one sorting weight 2. The MAC address, we are going to make sorting weight. By the way, the default sorting weight is 50. Sorting weight 51, because we'll want it further than the middle. And then we will do DNS address, and we will put that at 52 and hope that everything works according to plan. I will also add it here. You'll understand why I'm doing all of this in a few moments, and that will be 3. Okay, so I'm saving this file. I am going to go over here. Install. Whilst it compiles, I'm going to fast forward and see you on the other side.
A few moments later.
And now we are waiting for the device to start, and it has started. In fact, we have Home Assistant 2024.10.3 already. Let's go and see the results. And as I said, I've had a couple of issues earlier on, so I am just going to force it. And yes, the connected SSID was at the top. And the Wi-Fi signal is now in position 3. which is where I thought it would be. And oddly enough, the sorting weight here for Wi-Fi info is in position 4, followed by connected SSID, which is correct, sorting 2, and so forth. There was definitely a change in between 2024.10 and 2024.10.1. However, this doesn't change things much for us because this is not what really interests me. The magic is in the next step. So we are going to go back to web server. We are going to start talking about sorting groups. I really can't remember seeing this prior to 2024.10, but there seems to be a new sorting group for the web server. It has effects on both the web server component and the properties on the component. So let's address the web server component first. To enable sorting group, we will need to add the sorting group properties to our web server file. Now, I'm going to put some in the web server file. As we know in our modular approach, it is a bad idea to change those files regularly because it may break other devices. Beyond what I'm going to be putting in this tutorial, maybe in a few others, I wouldn't advise you to edit the web server file any other time. In this case, I am putting it in the web server, and there are a few things that we need to change to the web in the web server to get it right enough to be able to use it in a modular environment. So the first thing that I'm going to do, which I never did earlier, is just give it an ID, and the ID I'm going to give it is going to be very original. If I can copy. And there it is. Device internal name, web server. Why don't I put anything else but web server? Because we can only have one web server, so we're not too concerned about anything else. Now, this will allow us, and I think I'm explaining that in the next tutorial in the modular and tips and tricks series, but this will allow us to go and modify that on inside of our device file. We are going to need to add a few more things. And again, I'm going to copy it and paste it. So let me explain to you what this is. So the first one is we are declaring a new property called sorting groups. The first of these is the Wi-Fi group. And the Wi-Fi group, its name is going to be Wi-Fi diagnostics. And its sorting weight is 90. So I really want it at the bottom. I'll show you what it does to the web server and the web page, or I should say the web page. But essentially what it does is that it creates a new block and puts it below diagnostics. But is this enough? The answer is no. There's one more thing we need to do. We need to return to our sensors on the Wi-Fi page, but let's save this first. And we are going to make a space, and we are going to put sorting underscore ID colon, and we are going to go and fetch the sorting group ID that is here, Wi-Fi sorting group, and we're going to add it here, and we're going to copy this, and we are going to add it in all the places where we've put sorting. I got one missing. There it is. We are going to save that. We are going to stop this. Install wirelessly.
A few moments later.
And we are up again. And I am going to go back to the web page. And obviously nothing has changed because we haven't refreshed. So let's refresh and look at that. We now have a new block. Let me put it a little higher, which is at the bottom of or under diagnostics with everything that's related to Wi-Fi called Wi-Fi diagnostics. I think this is going to be very useful in the long run. Why? Because it allows us to debug that and troubleshoot that much faster. So what do I expect for the future of this specific addition to ESPHome. I think it's going to translate eventually, and I hope it's going to translate eventually to Home Assistant. Because obviously in Home Assistant, when we've got a device like this, and let me go and show you that, I would have to go in the settings, device and services, ESPHome. I've only got 3 devices, and this is the device that I want to use. And you see configuration, which is on par with what we've got inside of the web page. But this does not change. So this is still diagnostics. And imagine having that as well there. We can now go and, for our diagnostic, in this case of the Wi-Fi, for our Wi-Fi diagnostic, we could go add to dashboard and it would just happen. That would be really, really useful. Also, having it separate in here makes it easier for us as well to decide what we show and what we don't show. So we could really hide all of this. The web server has many more properties which I have not touched on. These are properties that you are unlikely to use, such as those related to custom CSS or JavaScript. I may do a tutorial on these one day when I do the advanced ESPHome tutorials. But right now, let's not worry about it. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and enjoyable. If you did, consider liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell so that you never miss out on a future tutorial. Also, remember that you can support the channel by becoming a channel member and get some exclusive looks behind the screen coming soon, as well as helping steer the channel direction by answering polls. I already want to thank Jerry Foster and Chip Mayer, I hope that I haven't butchered your name too much, for joining the memberships. You can also join the discussion or ask questions either in the comments or on Discord, where each tutorial has its own thread. Thank you for joining me in this impromptu tutorial. This was Pascal, signing off. See you in the next one.